Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag-and-drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
In just a matter of seconds, you're going to hear a classic episode of this show from back in the day when we called ourselves Movies We Like.
It took us a while to settle into the show's format, so you'll notice some differences as you listen to these episodes. For instance, it takes us a bit of time to actually get into the conversation about the movie. Things like that.
But we're still proud of the conversations about the movies themselves, and we think they're worth keeping in the library.
So enjoy these episodes from our back catalog. And you can become part of our Discord community, learn more about the show, and find out how you can become a supporting member at thenextreel.com.
So thank you, everybody, for downloading and listening to The Next Reel. We appreciate your time and attention, and we hope you enjoy the show. Have you seen anything?
Yes, I took the family to Pete's Dragon, which was actually really good.
I've heard nothing but good things about that movie. Why was it so great?
It's just, it has a real sense of heart to it. It's got it's got a great story, really touching characters. It's funny, it's tender, it's adventurous. It's just kind of hit all the buttons, and in a year where Disney already has done a live action Jungle Book, it really kind of surprised me that Pete's Dragon also ended up working so well. it's very interesting to me, and it kind of gives me hope for future live action Disney retreads. And although I'm still a little skeptical on the Dumbo, that I think, is it Tim Burton doing Dumbo?
Oh, good grief.
Well, I'm not quite sure. But then again, I mean, these two really kind of set a high bar. So maybe it can.
All right. What do you think of the actual dragon? I mean, all I've seen is in the trailer.
He's great. He's different from the Elliot in the animated version, or the live action version with the animated dragon. Definitely is a different character design, but there's something about his design here that still makes him kind of just something that kids will be drawn to, a very soft and cuddly sort of dragon. And I liked it. I liked that he was kind of a furry dragon. It worked well for the context of the movie.
That's awesome. I look forward to it. I could not take anybody to a movie because we brought my son home from camp and he was sick. Again, so we've got more illness in the family. So I saw nothing.
You know what?
Except for the movie we're talking about tonight.
Know what? Your daughter could probably bleed him. She could probably draw out the infection.
Medically, I don't think that's the term they use anymore.
Doesn't it sound much like scarier and more dramatic?
Get
the leeches, Dad.
I hear that. Get the leeches, Dad. That's right. Oh, I look forward to that. We have some follow up on Children of Men.
Yes.
We got a fantastic email from friend of the show, Nick Langdon, who wrote in on his opinion on Children of Men, and he loves this film. He actually included his rank. This Children of Men is 1 out of 958. His
favorite film of all time.
We need to respond to one point in particular. Well, first of all, he says some just fantastic. He has some fantastic insights. One of the many things I love about this film, he says, is the highly realistic lived-in world it creates. Cuarón's aim was for humanity to get up to about 2010 and then give up. Hence, the cars seemed a few years ahead for 2006, but then had just been patched up and maintained as no new models were released. The whole of Earth becoming like embargo-era Cuba. I love the way he frames that. Then he says, as for your flick chart ranking, I find it slightly odd you, rightly, praised the long takes of this film and how they are not only technically dazzling, but also drew you into the story and the world, make you feel what the characters are, then promptly have it lose to one of the most over-edited, hacked-up films to somehow win plaudits for its editing, Inception, average shot length 3.1 seconds, versus Children of Men at 16.4. Christopher Nolan and his editor, Lee Smith, are committed to the most conservative, predictable, and literal type of cinema, where everything is shot reverse shot, and he never uses 4 cuts to cover the same thing when he could use 13. And then he posts a link to another piece on this specific point. What do you think about that?
I think this is one of those issues of contention that some people have about filmmakers and how they put stuff together. I looked at that link that he included. I read that article, and I really just disagree. I mean, I understand what he's saying, and yes, Christopher Nolan certainly used a good number of shots to cut some of those scenes together. And yeah, sure, you can call it just very kind of conservative, predictable, literal type of filmmaking. It's just, very straightforward. But it's the way that particular story is being told, and Christopher Nolan is telling that story. Not every film has to be another Jean-Luc Godard film. They don't all have to be told in a really artistic way. Cuarón uses some really interesting techniques to tell his story, but that's the way that he tells his story. Everyone tells their stories in different ways. I mean, it's like complaining that, Stephen King writes, too straightforward in his prose. He's not enough T.S. Eliot or something. For me, it's just the different ways that different people tell their stories. It's different art. And yes, some people may work better with the medium using the tools in one way, and they may want to try doing other things. I think Christopher Nolan does a lot of incredibly artistic things in his films, and that film in particular. I really enjoy the way he builds that world, and I really enjoy the way he told that story. I really connected with it. I didn't find it over-edited. I found it worked very well for me. And I think that's just, hearing that comment, I can see where you're coming from, but at the same time, I don't think it detracted from Inception for me, and so that's again, I just really enjoyed Inception, and I guess that's why I picked it.
I do too, and I think for me it's telling that both of these films would end up practically back to back with each other, Inception and Children of Men, on my own flick chart, and that says something to me that it's okay. I find it okay to like both styles, visual styles. This is his visual language, and I think Cuarón has, as you so rightly say, I think he has a certain voice that he uses, and Nolan's voice tends to be much more frenetic, and that's okay too. I deeply enjoy the story of Inception, and I am absolutely wrapped up in it and lose sense of the visual style that he's using pretty quickly into it. I can just sort of lose myself in the story. And so the rapid cutting doesn't hurt my feelings at all. And yet, when I watch Children of Men, the long cutting, his style actually stays in that sort of awareness part of my brain. It actually adds to the story, and they're just two very different effects that they have on me, and I think that's okay. I actually don't. I really don't have a problem with conservative, predictable, literal cinema. I really don't. I think it's okay to like all kinds of cinema, and Inception gives me a great dopamine push. I'm okay celebrating that.
And not to belabor this point, but aside from the shot economy, there's this other side of the economy. That's the financial economy of filmmaking. And when you're working on such a big scale like Nolan is with Inception, you have a lot of money to make a movie like that, but just because you have a lot of money doesn't necessarily mean that you can just kind of freewheel and do whatever it is you want. They have a very strict schedule, and they have to make sure they spend all that money wisely in context of making that big film. And I'm just guessing, but they likely would not have been able to, with all the other stuff going on in the film, they likely would not have been able to take 14 days to plan a shot and really make sure that everything was working perfectly. Even if it was a 6 or 7 minute long shot, they would not have been able to take that time to do that in context of the entire movie they're making. In Children of Men, it ended up working for Cuarón and his people, and as that was the film they were making. When he went on to make Gravity, that ended up working into context of that particular film. It's just, there's a financial economy, and sometimes a filmmaker and the filmmaking team would be able to kind of build that into the budget, and sometimes not.
Thank you, Nick, for writing that in, because I hadn't really thought a whole lot about the comparison between those two films, and I think it's a good one to look at and really just to sort of drop into this conversation. That was well commented, so we appreciate that. Okay, I think we should tell the people where we're from.
Where are we from?
This is The Next Reel, everybody. I'm Pete Wright, and that there is Andy Nelson.
Hey!
And we spoil movies tonight on the show, the penultimate picture in our disease series with Fernando Meirelles, 2008 film Blindness. Before we get into that, you should learn more about us at thenextreel.com. Subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast app, or join us on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Next Reel. And if you've ever turned into a sociopath just after an appointment with your ophthalmologist, then you've probably got The Next Reel's Instagram, #PonyPrize, #GuessTheMovieChallenge right in your sights.
And with that, let's steal a car from a blind man and drive on over to Games Master Steven Smart's pad to find out who won this week.
Hey guys, this week's movie was Stay Hungry from 1976. Directed by Bob Rafelson and starring Jeff Bridges, Sally Field and Arnold Schwarzenegger. Congrats to @Fegfay who guessed it on Image 1. You are entered once again into the 2016 Pony Prize hat. As always, a new challenge starts on Monday. So thanks guys, and see you later.
Speaking of Children of Men, we do have a blot spot. The good friend of the show, Ben Lott, has written in with his take on Children of Men. How'd we do?
Yes, this was my third time watching Children of Men, and it's the first time I feel like I can say I kind of liked it. I've always struggled a lot with the overwhelming bleakness of the film, and even the conclusion doesn't feel very satisfying. But I must admit the cast is great and the cinematography is stellar. I just wish I connected more to the story. Your rank 16, my rank 63.
I feel like we did Ben a service there.
I think we should make sure he watches it again and again and again.
Yeah, until it gets up at least into the top 15.
There you go.
I think that'd be good. I actually really appreciated this comment because it felt a lot like my take on it, although for different reasons. Ben clearly watched the film critically 2 times and didn't like it. I apparently watched the film and maybe slept through it with my eyes open before I actually watched it again. So thank you again. And the Blot Spot. Andy, it's time. Let's do trailers. You got a Handsome Lad trailer this week.
A handsome lad and a sexy lady.
You know what the problem is with Brad Pitt?
Is there a problem with Brad Pitt?
Yes, of course there's a problem. It's that he started out handsome when he was a young lad, you know?
And he just gets more and more handsome.
Now he's a good-looking man now. He just keeps getting handsomer. Stupid Brad Pitt and all his handsomeness.
Man, even when he's dour, he's still handsome.
Ain't that right?
How does he pull that off?
Ain't that right? You want to talk about your trailer?
Sure. Sorry, I'm stuck on handsome Brad. So my trailer, which is really a teaser, but I opted to go with it just because it got me so excited. This is Allied, the new film by Robert Zemeckis.
Oh, I'm looking forward to this.
And I mean, Robert Zemeckis is just one of those filmmakers who I hear his name and I know I'm instantly going to be going to see his film because no matter what, he is a filmmaker who knows how to, talking about Cuarón, who knows how to work with the camera and work in the world of cinema to tell really, really fascinating stories. I just love watching what he does when he's putting a movie together. They always fascinate me, and I almost feel like he can do no wrong. So he is somebody I will definitely see. And this film is the story of intelligence officer Max Vatan, who in 1942, North Africa, encounters French resistance fighter Marianne Beauséjour on a deadly mission behind enemy lines. Reunited in London, their relationship is threatened by the extreme pressures of the war. It looks like a very interesting movie. We've got Marion Cotillard playing looks like she might be a little bit of a spy or something. I'm not quite sure.
It feels, yeah, go ahead. Your
feels
turn.
spyish,
yeah.
But it feels like there's some of that, and then they kind of fall in love. It looks like they might even have a baby, and we shall see exactly how all of this goes. It is just a teaser, but they look great. The period looks great. Everything about this looks great. It also has Lizzie Kaplan, who I love, Matthew Goode. It's Jared Harris pops up in here. I think it's going to be a really interesting cast, and Zemeckis in World War II. I just feel like it's going to be a really fascinating story. Oh, and I didn't even say, it's written by Stephen Knight, who we've mentioned on the show a number of times as somebody who we really enjoy.
We like him a lot. And, have you started watching Peaky Blinders?
I haven't.
Oh,
I need
man.
to.
Man.
No.
Anyhow, Stephen Knight is a writer on that one. Lizzie Kaplan, I'm very excited to see her in another film as much as I enjoyed Now You See Me Too. And, that was, I sort of enjoyed it. I really enjoy her as an actress, and I think, she's someone to watch. And it'll be interesting to see her in something that's probably not quite so humorous. Matthew Goode, too. I loved him in Imitation Game and Watchmen. I think he's
Match
fantastic.
Point.
Yeah, Match Point, also
Single
fantastic.
Man. Yeah,
So
he's been great.
I'm very excited about this cast, and it has a fantastic pedigree, and Brad Pitt.
Yes, indeed. Handsome Brad. It looks like this is going to be opening for Thanksgiving here in the U.S., November 23rd, and it's going to be spreading from the 23rd to December 1st around the world.
My trailer, Andy, I'm going to tell you, I almost did Hidden Figures, which looks like a very sweet film. I saw this on it was the Olympic trailer, and for Hidden Figures came out this. I'm not going to do that movie though. This is great. You should go watch that trailer, but that's not the trailer I'm going to do because I then stumbled on the trailer for The Good Neighbor. Oh dear, James Caan is such a scary man. He is a scary man just walking down the street, but you put him in a scary movie, and it gets so much better. He is, we've got a pair of high school kids, played by Keir Gilchrist and Logan Miller, who try to trick their neighbor with cameras and robotic arms and things. They kit his house, this old man's house, so that they can try and trick him. and make him think that it's haunted, this house. And turns out it's James Caan, and they should have looked at his IMDb page. And before they did this, they are idiots. The film, it comes to us courtesy of director Kasra Farahani, who is, this is a first-time feature director for Kasra Farahani, who has a long list of credits in the art department, art director on films such as Star Trek Into Darkness, Men in Black 3, Thor. So lots of art direction experience, taking it to the director's chair. It's written by Mark Bianculli and Jeff Richard, who, as far as I can tell, have no feature film credits to their name. So this should be an interesting one with some first-timers bringing us a scary-looking film. What'd you think?
I loved this trailer.
I knew you would.
It looked so exciting. This is just the sort of, it reminded me of that trailer that I pulled a few weeks ago. What was it? Don't Breathe?
That's the one.
With the kids who break into the house with the blind man there, but it turns out that there's a lot more going on here. This has that same vibe where you've got these kids who do something stupid in this old guy's house, and now he's after them. And I think that it popped up in the trailer, said, it's a Rear Window for the surveillance age. Alfred Hitchcock would be proud, which really kind of piqued my interest. I believe they said something similar when that Shia LaBeouf movie came out, where he was holed up at his house and thought his neighbor was up to no good, which I don't think quite held up to Hitchcock levels, but it was still fun. This looks like it's got a much more intense level of creepiness, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing this and seeing how it all comes together.
The only release date I've got, besides its already premiered status at South by Southwest, is September 16th in the USA. So be on the lookout for The Good Neighbor in your part of the world. Let us know what you think.
Excellent.
You know, the only thing more terrifying than blindness, Andy, is being the only one who can see.
Nothing. To be honest with you, I've never experienced anything like this before. I just wanted to get your take on a bizarre case I saw today.
What's the matter?
I can't see. Somehow that patient infected me.
That's impossible. Nobody goes blind like that.
Good morning, Minister. Some strange calls this morning.
I need security at 18. Ready?
Ma'am, I'm gonna have to ask you to come with us.
May I have those files, please?
My fellow citizens, like so many of you, I have gone blind.
We're in a state of crisis.
They're gonna be here any minute.
The decision to quarantine all those infected was not taken without careful consideration.
Step down, ma'am. You're not blind. This vehicle is for the infected.
No, you'll have to take me.
Fine, have it your way.
Blindness, Andy, 2008. Now, we like this Fernando Meirelles. He is, we did City of God on the show. We both quite liked that film.
Yes, and he did Constant Gardener, which I like quite a bit.
We did like Constant Gardener. We like that too. And so here we are, coming to Blindness with our, dare I say it, eyes wide open.
Oh, wow.
Now, you had already seen, shut it. You'd already seen Blindness, didn't you?
I have.
You had.
Yes, I had seen this because I liked City of God.
You still wanted it to be in this series. That's good.
I guess I'm the weird one.
Okay, so the story of Blindness. This is a city that is a nameless city, a generic city that is ravaged by some sort of mysterious plague that causes instantaneous blindness to its inhabitants, and the blindness is white. It is called like the white blindness, right?
The white sickness.
The white sickness. Everybody goes blind except for one person, and that is Julianne Moore. So if you're caught in an epidemic like this, find Julianne. Everybody go to her house because she's the one.
she's the one, and it makes it sound like this actually spreads worldwide. It sounds like the whole thing goes everywhere.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Planes fall from the sky, crash into one another, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, right. Everybody is eaten by dogs.
Yeah,
as a
that's
result.
the danger.
Yeah, that's the danger. The film is based on the book by the same name by José Saramago, and it actually won the Nobel Prize for Literature that year. It's a pretty powerful story. What's your sense of the adaptation to screen? This seems like a pretty divisive film.
It's a very divisive film. In fact, I think it's divisive, but I think most people seem to not like it.
Divisive, leaning negative.
Yes, I think, but there are people who love the film. Well, and obviously people who love the book. I mean, the book is very beloved. I never read it. I haven't read anything of his. So I'm curious about it, but it did sound like it is very kind of sparse, kind of like the way that this film ended up feeling. So much so that the author, when he saw the film, said that, he said he was in tears. He felt like he was, it brought him back to when he finished the book. It felt exactly the same to him, which I think speaks, well of the filmmakers and their vision to actually bring this book to the screen so effectively. And I think some people really clicked with it. There are some critics who put it on their, top 10 of the year lists and all of that. But I think most people seem to not click with it. Definitely a handful of critics really didn't like it. And definitely the audiences didn't seem to care for it too much. So it's interesting because I think the people who really click with it. And the people who don't just hate it.
It makes me want to read the book a little bit. I'm going to tell you, I'm probably not going to read the book after seeing the movie, but a little bit I want to do that. Because I think I did not click with the movie. Spoiler alert, I'm not crazy about it. I probably will not watch the movie again. But I don't think I didn't like it for the same reason that a lot of people didn't like it. The film goes dark really, really fast. And the whole idea about the film, that as soon as you get this disease, the entire population gets this disease, they turn into sociopathic maniacs and just completely fall apart, I think does a great discredit to the challenges that come with, well, first of all, blindness. I think that I come to this film being wildly more optimistic about humanity. And the film does not do a good job, a satisfactory job, of helping me believe that I should think otherwise. And I'm calling this, Andy, I'm trying to fashion an axiom. And I'm calling it the next real reality paradox, Andy. What do you think about that? It sounds good, right?
I like it.
You don't even need to know what it means.
We can put it in our lexicography.
We should put it exactly there because nobody ever looks at it, and that's probably where this belongs. The whole idea is that the film starts off with a promise, right? The film makes a promise that I'm going to have to believe something. It doesn't matter if I'm looking at a fantasy. It doesn't matter if it's science fiction. It doesn't matter if it's straight drama. It doesn't matter if it's horror, whatever. They're making a promise with this universe, and they have to deliver on the universe in doses that will cement my belief in it throughout the course of the film, so that by the time we get to the end of the film, when I reach the climax of the film, I am able to go back and piece together how I feel about this world that they've created, how I feel about the rules that they've set up, and how I feel about the people who inhabit this world, that I have an affinity to them in such a way that I believe my experience was legitimate, whether I am a Jedi Knight, or whether I am a blind sociopath in a haunted house, or whether I am I don't know. You know what I'm saying? And this film fails so many times on that front because I think they try to jam too much into this movie too fast, and their opinion of humanity is so dour in allegory that I'm never able to quite catch up. And as soon as I start slapping my forehead and thinking, God, these people are so stupid. No one would do that. They haven't made a case for how we would fall apart like this. They haven't made their case. They lose me. I'm all for watching gross movies. I'm all for watching these kinds of things. They did not make a satisfactory case in the court of entertainment that I was able to sign on to.
I think that's interesting. I think I can see what you're saying. For me, I guess I felt like the case worked. Maybe I just have more of a pessimistic view of people. But I could see how if everybody went blind at once, how people, it would be, you're taking away a sense of everybody. Nobody really has time to be trained on this. I mean, I appreciate that that kind of was it the American Association for the Blind or one of those groups really, really hated this film, and they were trying to promote people to not see it, and were just completely against it. And I thought that was really interesting that happened. But because they were really afraid that people were going to have this this negative reaction to blind people, and it was going to be detrimental to people's opinions of blind people.
This is the National Federation of the Blind.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
For me, I had no connection between blind people in the real world and the people who go blind in this film, because it's such a difference in the people themselves. This is like a mass blind epidemic where everybody all of a sudden goes blind. Everybody has a complete sense taken away from them, and now has to figure out how to rely with nobody else to really kind of train them how. And so everybody's really figuring it out from the ground up. I thought it worked. For me, I kind of bought into it. I bought into kind of the messiness and the struggle that everybody had with it. And the way that people went about piecing this together as best they could. So for me, I bought into the world. I definitely find it a dark film, a hard film to watch, a hard film to get into. It certainly isn't a film. I remember watching it the first time going, oh, that was kind of a bit of a dour film. This time I found myself enjoying it a little more. I still don't think it's something that I would run out and watch again after this. In that sense, I feel like I got more out of it this time, but I still don't think I would run back and jump in.
Well, 2 points. One, on this the mass blindness and having it be something that is experienced by people who are seeing and suddenly they are not. The problem that I have with that entire argument is that a central character in the film was blind all along, and he is one of the worst people in the film. And the accountant character, he was already blind, and he is a role model for sociopathy. So
yeah, but
that doesn't hold water.
Well, but we have a great quote about that in the film that I thought sold that, and I didn't need anything else to say, oh, well, he's representing all blind people either, because you've got that great line. He's blind, that's all. It doesn't make him good or bad. That just makes him blind, and now he's blind with a purpose. So, it's... I didn't have any issue with that. That's like saying, why does every blind person depicted have to be a good person?
No, they certainly don't. But it just makes me think. Okay, we have this movie. I can see why people in the blind community who didn't like this film really didn't like this film, because it's not just about mass sightlessness, right? When you put a character like that in the film, it doesn't matter what the script says. It's what the character represents to the film. It's what he symbolizes, and he doesn't symbolize good stuff. And so that's my only point.
Well, to that end, I will just say, and it's probably maybe a little confusion on the part of the filmmakers. I actually thought the entire time that Danny Glover's character was also blind the entire time.
Yeah, I heard you say that. I did not see that myself. I thought he was, but maybe you're right. And so you're saying that they were trying to balance the table?
Well, yeah, I mean, it seemed
don't worry, we know there's a bad blind guy, but there's also a good blind guy with an eye patch.
Right, exactly.
Okay, all right, that's fair. To your point about the NFB not liking this, I really don't think they have anything to worry about. This film wasn't that good to make an impact on our opinion of blind people. So really, we're okay. Can you talk a little bit about how this thing turned from a book to a movie? Because I think it's an awesome story.
Yeah, I mean, he had people trying to get the rights from him for actually a number of his books, but he was always kind of leery of selling the rights because he didn't want people to change the stories and modify things. He liked his stories and he wanted them to be what they were. He didn't want them to be, totally destroyed by Hollywood, as people tend to do. This story, it sounds like a number of people actually had expressed interest in it, including, I think it was Whoopi Goldberg, and of course Meirelles and Gael García Bernal, actually, interestingly. He had refused to sell the rights to all of those people at various points. And finally, Don McKellar, who wrote the script, he's Canadian, and producer Niv Fitchman actually went to visit Saramago in the Canary Islands where he lives. And he said that he'll talk to them, but only if they do not discuss money. He did not want to have any conversations about that, just about kind of what they were thinking of doing. And so McKellar kind of talked about how he thought he would work on the story and what the focus would be and all that. And somehow they managed to convince Saramago to sell them the rights. But Saramago had a few conditions that had to be met. And the conditions were that the country had to be unrecognizable, not set in a specific city that people would say, oh, that's such and such a place. It had to be kind of a no-name city. And that the dog in the novel, the Dog of Tears, should be a big dog. And that's apparently the things that he was concerned about.
Those were his concerns from his villain's lair in the Canary Islands. They had to take a flying car that actually docked with a boat that turned into a submarine.
It's one way to kind of go about it. And interestingly, shortly after this, I guess things must have changed for him, because then he let some people adapt it to be on stage, and then just a few years after the movie, he let somebody adapt it into an opera. So I guess he ended up kind of opening up to the idea of adaptations.
Yeah, I guess so. And he liked the way this turned out, as you already said. It really connected with him. So be it. What did you think of the screenplay itself, Don McKellar? Now we know Don McKellar from he's an actor, director, writer, a multi-talented performer. What did you think of the script?
He's an interesting guy. As far as writing, I don't think I've seen much of his stuff. 32 short films about Glenn Gould, The Red Violin, and this, I think, are the only things I've seen. I think the adaptation works. I mean, I'm not, without comparing it to the book, I mean, I know that in the book, we also have characters that don't have names. They're all called by their description. Another way to kind of strip their identity and kind of create this disconnect from everybody, which I thought was very interesting. I felt like he did a pretty good job. There were elements that I felt could have worked better. But on the whole, I mean, I didn't personally have a huge issue with the script itself.
I think I don't know. I don't know how much of this to attribute to the book. But when you have scenes, exactly. When you have scenes that are we've got all of the people who are blind get quarantined in a abandoned sanatorium because we would do that, I guess, as humanity. They all get put in this just absolutely filthy place with no. There's no care, there's no nothing, just soldiers and walls around it, and they all have guns. And we have scenes like this. So we've got a sick man, somebody who has hurt his leg. It's actually Don McKellar, who's a character in the film. He's hurt himself, and our protagonist is screaming, I've got a sick man here, to some guards. And the guards say, if you don't stand back, I'm going to shoot you. Right, and this happens repeatedly. The guards simply respond with that brick wall attitude, and this goes back to what I mean with the next real reality paradox. Mm-hmm. They have not set up me to believe that any rational military force would have reacted that way. You cannot rationalize idiocy for narrative. Or I should say, you can only rationalize idiocy for narrative so far. And this film has a lot of that. It has a lot of those kinds of moments that are just ridiculous. One of the central points of the film that people have complaints with is that our main character, Julianne Moore's character, does not respond. She is a person in an environment who has a superpower, right? She can see when everyone around her cannot. And they start to violate one another in horrible ways. And she takes no action apart from doing her best for a little while to keep it clean and to take care of the people immediately around her. But as those people start to get pushed and poked, she takes no action. And I find that wholly unbelievable. Again, they didn't set that up. And watching an interview with Julianne Moore, she tries to rationalize this, saying, "Oh yeah, the character, she's selfish. She's selfish. She's not an American cinema superhero like we've all come to expect. She's doing just for her," which absolutely fails in the narrative of the film, because doing just for her in this case is to stop mass group rape. It is to stop stealing food. It is to do these things that you are empowered to do, and she does not do it. I find that incredibly difficult to watch, and that's why the whole middle section of the film is really tough.
I can see where you're coming from, and I certainly have some issues in that stretch also. Some areas that frustrate me, and that that are kind of I question the logic and everything. I don't. It doesn't completely bother me, but I can definitely see what you're saying with that. And elements like, it takes that other woman to finally, a blind woman, to get the bright idea to go set a fire over in Ward 1 to kind of burn all those guys down. But it seems like, that's something that perhaps Julianne Moore's character should have done. She could easily have gone over there and done that. And if that's the sort of thing that she did in the film, and I guess that's what the filmmakers are saying, the storytellers are saying, she's not a hero. She's not the sort of person who's going to do that. And maybe that's why audiences didn't connect with it. It's one of those things where if she had done that, and if she was the one who kind of stepped up, it would have made it stronger, right?
Yeah, but I also, not because of an American cinema gestalt, because of a rational situational awareness of the scene. Like, this is a person who I just believe that if you put them in this Lord of the Flies environment, that she's going to be forced to step up sooner than she stepped up. And that, I think, is a central failing of her character, and something they just did not build a good case against.
I can see. I totally can see what you're saying. I guess for me, I bought into her character more, and I bought into the internal challenge she had with actually making the change and doing anything. But that being said, I think it is in story context, looking at it from the outside, I think it is relatively weak. So I would say that you probably win this one.
Okay. All right. Points are on the wall, written in poop, just like blindness. So anyway, this is we're talking about the script, and this is really, I don't know whether to ascribe these challenges to the script or to the book. This is what makes me think I likely would not like the book all that much, because it didn't read as sound allegory to me. It was just sort of pushing this relentless disgust and pain without justification. So that's my comment on the script. The direction, though. What do we think of how Fernando handled the screen?
I have not seen much of his work. I think it's this City of God and Constant Gardener. I think that may be.
And the opening ceremonies to the Rio Olympics.
Right, exactly. I did check that off my list. No, it's interesting. I think he's a really interesting director. He's got a strong style, and I really like what he does. Here, he definitely exhibits the style. I think he came up with a really interesting style as to how to tell this story. But again, it's a really tricky story, and obviously it's not one that clicked with people. It didn't, the way that he chose to tell the story, again, I think a lot of that does fall on the script and the original source material. But as the director, it also really falls on his shoulders as how he's going to reshape it as he makes it. Obviously, he had issues with the rape scene because people were walking out when they were doing test screenings, and he had to recut that. It was just kind of a difficult story to tell. I think for me, it's an interesting case in kind of style over substance, and I think there's a lot of great style here. I feel like he could have found a way to build the substance a little better, to make it something that even with all the difficult things to have to watch, that we could have clicked with it a little better.
I do too. I feel like we're going to get into a little bit of the camera, but some of the visual treatment I really really liked. I actually think that he made some wonderful choices around how to depict white sickness on screen, particularly in the first person shooter cam. When you have people looking at their hands and reaching out. I actually really thought that was neat. Really, just cranking up the gain, and just opening up the camera. It burned your eyes, and I actually found that challenging to watch, but I really liked it. What I didn't like was it felt like they increasingly shot off angle, like off subject. So, when we're having a scene between two of the blind characters in the ward, we might be looking at the top of his head and a hand, but not the subject. And that felt like such a dumb gimmick to me. It felt so stupid that it would work. It would have worked in any other film, but this is a film about blindness. And when you have a film where all we're thinking about is a thing that we can't see, and then you put the camera off center, off focus, off intention, it feels like a gimmick. It feels like a gag. Did you? You don't share that?
No, I liked it. I didn't think it was overdone to the point where it felt like a gag. I liked the way that it kind of came and went. It wasn't always there, but it definitely had its moments, and it was blended, I felt, with some of the other shots where you'd have a kind of an empty frame, and then a character kind of moves through a corner of it or something like that. Some interesting choices in the way that they shot it. I didn't have any issues with the gimmickiness of it. I thought it was actually quite effective, and I liked it. I kept making notes about how much I was enjoying watching the way that he chose to show this.
That's fascinating, because there are other films that have shot similar to that. Even recent films, we just did the JJ and Steve did the trailer rewind on Comet, which has some similar kind of framing, and not quite so obviously out of frame, but just not quite right. And that works really well. That works extremely well. I wonder if it had been a film full of characters where a central theme of the narrative was that they are blind, and then you start shooting, out of frame, if that would have worked as well. That's where it didn't work for me. It just felt gimmicky. In an area, and I generally trust Fernando Meirelles so deeply when it comes to these things.
Well, yeah, I think that he had a really strong sense of his camera in City of God and Constant Gardener.
Right.
Both of those, I really enjoyed the way he let the stories unfold on screen, and he did a great job playing with the actors and the framing and everything. Just really strong presence felt. And I felt it worked here. But again, this is a different type of storytelling. This is definitely much more of kind of almost a fantastical allegory type of storytelling that he's doing here. Very different from City of God, which is just incredibly kinetic, and it had just so much stuff going on in that film. And then Constant Gardener, which is it's a Jean Le Carré kind of a mystery thriller. So between those two, he's got a lot of genre conventions that he can go to. Here, it is a very different type of storytelling. And so I think he applied a lot of his style to it, which I guess I liked, but I can see why you wouldn't necessarily like it. It can seem gimmicky. And I have a feeling people who generally don't connect with the story, it's probably one of those things they're going to notice a lot quicker, that the camera is, playing these little games and be somebody who's not going to be clicking with it so much.
Yeah, no, I can totally see that. Let's talk about first shot, last shot, speaking of camera.
Yeah, interesting. The first shot, it's interesting because the first shots are all so quick, and it's really just a montage of close-ups and extreme close-ups of vehicles and traffic. We've got the very first shot is a close-up of a car as it passes by, and then we cut to an extreme close-up of the lens in a red light, and then more cars and more traffic lights, and we got a lot of this just kinetic motion and energy as all this stuff is getting cut back and forth. And then we're slowly the shots are slowly getting wider as we finally kind of back up enough to see that we've got this traffic situation on this busy road, and we've got this driver who all of a sudden he's in his car and he can't see anymore. So right out of the gate, we're presented with an incredibly busy kinetic world that we're currently living in, and full of busy people all running their own way, and this guy with the blindness. And the very last shot, we see Julianne Moore looking out of her house. She's looking up, and we see, then it cuts to just amazing screen of white, kind of this soft, fluffy white, and then we realize that it's clouds as the camera tilts down, and it reveals a city skyline. Everything is much more peaceful and tranquil, and it has definitely more serenity to it throughout. So that's the first and last shot.
I think the first and last shot pairing visually is one that really strikes me as a representation of the whole film. The opening sequence is a great deal of pain, which is the first thing we see when he loses his sight. The first blind man loses his sight. It's a very painful experience to watch him do that, and to watch, the entire world around him has to stop. But what we see, the very first thing we see, is also a visually painful experience. It is hyper bright lights, right? These lights that are huge, they fill the screen and they kind of hurt. And the last scene, it's like we resolve to something that is much more sort of visually easy to look at. And I think ends weirdly optimistically for me. And I know that was a point I wanted to talk about with you, was how these things, this pairing and this overall narrative ends for you. Is it optimistic or pessimistic?
I felt optimism. There's definitely, it's almost like people have had to shift their perspective. And initially, everybody's just running around doing their thing, living their own lives. But then because of this whole thing, people have had to kind of shift. And now they're finally, at least her group, this new family that she's created, they are finally in a place of peace. This blindness, this whole situation with this blindness is past. Now they are in a place where they can kind of calm down again and basically be, it's almost like a rebirth. We had this great big rain right before it. So it fits where it's almost like this cleansing these people have gone through, and now they can take a deep breath and start over.
Yeah, I think so too. And that was one of the comments in the book, was that the book ended much more pessimistically, even on the same sequence. But it just felt like there was this awareness that now we've been reborn and sight begins to return. And what have we wrought? We've destroyed civilization, and this is what happens. This is why we can't have nice things, is because we're all terrible people when we come up against any sort of struggle and strife. And in the film, I didn't get that feeling at all. It was much more of a feeling of that last shot of, as you say, I mean, it was finally a sense of we can stop for a minute, we can regroup, we can take a breath. It was a giant exhale.
Exactly. Yeah, I liked it.
Yeah, I did too, actually. I really did. The cast, we've already talked a little bit about Julianne Moore.
Yeah, she's the only one who didn't have to go through blindness training. Everybody else, they had to basically learn how to be blind. Christian Duravort, I'm not quite sure how you say his name, but he was he helped Meirelles on City of God, training some of the non-actor actors so that they could act on screen. And he kind of put everybody through blindness training so that they could really figure out how to do this, which I thought was interesting. But yeah, Julianne Moore, we already talked about her a little bit, but she's a really interesting actress. We talked about her last week in City of God. Definitely more screen time here. She is the lead. And, I think she carries the film well. I know, despite what you think about the way that she her character is in the film. I really like the way that she plays the character. I enjoy watching her. I enjoy her interactions with all the other blind people, with the guards. I enjoy the way that she kind of becomes this savior, helping this little kind of family group that she's created at the end as they make their way out into the city. It's really, I don't know. I thought she just really delivered.
Yeah, I agree with you on that point. That if I get rid of the narrative problem that I have with the character, if I get rid of the way she was written or perceived or even intended to be, I know Julianne Moore can carry a film. I mean, I enjoy watching her work, and I think she is a very talented actor. And so, I'm right with you. I really enjoy her relationship with these folks and the way she becomes the archetype of kind of Mother Teresa, right? That savior character, I think, is rightly said, and I think she's good. She is the vessel of the rather heavy-handed, symbolism. Is agnosia related to agnosticism? Those kinds of lines are I just hit my head against a wall. Those are tough. But
there are lines like that I feel like those are the sorts of things that work in the book.
Yes.
My hunch is that's a novel line, right?
It feels like a line such a novel
yes.
line.
Yeah. I think that sort of stuff works in context of a book. And that's something with Don McKellar as far as his adaptation. I felt like there were elements that he kept in the screenplay that might have been better off only in the book.
Yeah, I think so too. So that was it. And although I do agree that, when she finally experiences blindness, like her, she finds this basement warehouse underneath a grocery store that nobody else can find. And it's pitch black. There are no windows. There's no light. And she's struggling to find what she needs and then struggling to climb out of it and kind of, get the food past all of the people who have gone blind and have gone, feral.
Hungry.
Yeah. And
starving.
Right. And so, she's that whole sequence, I think is I think she does very well. And she really portrays that kind of helplessness, and literally helpless, because even the people who would want to save her struggle to save her because they can't see either. I think that's a great sequence.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And just as a little side note, as far as the effects go, the match that she was holding was actually a little light, and they would kind of flicker it up and down. And then in post, they actually went in and replaced it with an actual flame. So she's never actually holding a match, which I thought was interesting, because I thought as far as effects go, that worked really well. I had no idea.
Oh, and I would say, not to jump too much around, but the effects in this film were really surprising.
Yeah.
The way they digitally destroyed this town was magical. So anyway, how about Mark Ruffalo as Doctor?
He's Mark Ruffalo. I have a hard time. I don't know if I've ever seen a Mark Ruffalo performance that I don't like. I just think he's just so compelling to watch, and I think he delivers here. Again, it's an interesting role for him, because he is this guy who is the fixer. He is the one who's kind of been the leader. He is a doctor, an eye doctor, and here he is in a situation where he can't fix anybody, and he himself has gone blind, and he now has to rely on his wife. And I think there's a really great tension between the two of them, as he has to learn how to kind of accept that. And I really enjoy the scenes where he gets really frustrated with her and just doesn't want anything to do with her because, he's frustrated at himself. He can't do it anymore. I really like that.
I am so torn on this performance by Ruffalo. And again, similar to my problems with Julianne Moore's character, I have some major problems with the character of the Doctor. Like, how is it that this medical doctor, this ophthalmologist, this scientist is not an advocate to get the one person on the planet someplace where they can actually do some work on and discover why she has an immunity to this thing? How is that never a line that is uttered by him? Is so insipid to me that it prevented me from really finding a deep affinity to him. And yet, when he has the affair, I found that actually to be a really compelling bit of weakness. That was believable. to me when he finally kind of broke down and had the affair with the woman in dark glasses.
Which
So
I really agree. I love that scene between the two of them. But again, you're going back to kind of the script versus Mark Ruffalo's performance. I think his performance is great, and I agree that is one element of the script that is very frustrating. Why has nobody said, hey, or at the beginning? I mean, I know she kind of sneaks along with him because she doesn't want to be separated from her husband. I actually think that's a really kind of interesting thing that you don't see too often. So I actually liked that quite a bit. But
and once again, we have military people who can see that she can see, and they say whatever.
Yeah, right.
Right. That's a stupid thing. That is a stupid thing.
Well, yeah, it's
a stupid thing. Say it. You want to say it.
It does. It didn't bug me. It really didn't bug me.
All right.
Yeah.
So in terms of Mark Ruffalo's performance, I'm coming off of not liking him in Spotlight. Like, so I can't say that I am universally thrilled with Mark Ruffalo's performance. What was the one he just did that I did like so much? That was the Infinitely Polar Bear. So there's something to see him in. This one is not so much. For me, I felt like a very kind of I don't know, understated to the point of being ineffective to me throughout, with the exception of spots that I thought were very, very strong. Danny Glover is here. Story time for Danny.
Yeah, Danny Glover's always an interesting actor. I just loved that he wore an eye patch. I thought that was a great touch because it just, I don't know, I felt like Danny Glover, if he wore an eye patch in more movies, I would probably like him in more movies.
Yes, Andy, on this we firmly agree. I wanted more than anything else to read somewhere that wearing an eye patch was a condition of him taking the role.
That is very funny. It is very funny.
Maybe you'll like him in his upcoming 2017 film, Death Race 4.
I don't even know what to say about that.
Yeah, I know.
Really?
Yeah.
Death Race 4.
Yeah.
Were there 3 before?
I'm going to say yes, but I didn't see them. So,
that is so funny.
How about Gael García Bernal as bartender / king of Ward 3? He is an interesting character.
He is an interesting character. I generally like him in films. Very interesting actor. I guess in the book, he's actually a much more evil, malicious person. Here, Meirelles chose to kind of make him a little more like a kid with a gun. And I thought that was actually really interesting. He's a little more of a goofball. He still is equally terrifying, but I actually felt like the way that he was portrayed here might be even a little more dangerous than just an evil guy. Yeah,
certainly dangerous in the terms of being completely unpredictable.
Yes,
and I agree with that. I found the character ultimately does some really terrible things and becomes the leader of some really terrible parts of the human psyche that he taps into in the residents of Ward 3. And I think the choice for me, and on this I don't have a terribly strong position, but I think the choice to make him more unpredictable and more like a kid and less of a leader with any strength made me lack confidence that so many people would follow him to do such terrible things.
Yeah.
He didn't portray the charisma. He was just spastic. And I just wasn't convinced that he would be able to pull that off. But again, I like him so much as a performer that he was interesting to watch, and I was surprised actually at the transition when she finally takes action and goes to kill him, stab him with some surgical shears, that he was actually killed off so early, and that there was a lot more movie after that. That actually surprised me.
It's an interesting point that if everybody in Ward 3 was kind of along the same lines, why were they following him? Why weren't there more scuffles to get that gun when he was sleeping? I can't imagine the accountant is the only one keeping him safe. I mean, it seems like he could be taken pretty easily, and another evil person could have
Right.
Could have jumped in.
Well, I'll tell you, if you want to see a different side of Gael García Bernal, go check out what is it? It's the Amazon Mozart in the Jungle.
Oh yeah.
This is a very different Bernal. Let's just say that. It's a delightful show, and you should definitely check it out.
Cool.
You heard it here second.
I sure did.
Maury Chaikin, we've already talked a little bit about him. He plays the accountant. This is the one who was blind all along, and he's talk about unpredictable and mean.
He's mean, yeah, but it's interesting because he ends up having kind of a when they bring all the women over to rape them. He's the gentle one, and I don't know. I guess I don't know if I was surprised by that or expecting it, but it was interesting. And then the fact that he kind of is horrified to learn that that one of these women was killed, and it's just interesting the things that blind people don't end up noticing. And I thought that was an interesting little nod. He's one of those actors, though, that I am forever going to picture his moment in Dances with Wolves when he stands up and says to Kevin Costner, "I just pissed my pants and nobody can do anything about it." I will forever have that burned in my head, and I will never be able to see Maury Chaikin saying anything but that line.
That is great.
That's such a strange thing
Poor
to
Maury
Chaikin
Chaikin.
I know. Why that? I don't know, but that's what it is. He just did so good in that part, I guess.
Yeah, he was so good. He really buried himself in the part. What about the lovely Alice Braga?
She's nice. I liked seeing her again. We talked about her back in Red Belt.
Yes, love her.
And I really, I don't know, I guess she's not somebody that you see too often, but I enjoyed seeing her here. I thought she did fine.
That's every creative's what they really look forward to hearing.
You did fine.
You did fine.
I liked the actual sense that, okay, here's this kind of prostitute who, because of this whole situation that she undergoes, ends up shifting a little bit and finding this maternal streak that I thought was kind of touching, as she ends up being the one who kind of takes this kid under her wing and kind of becomes the maternal figure for this boy as they try to figure this whole thing out. I liked that. I thought it was nice, and I thought it was very touching the moment she had with Danny Glover at the end. As their relationship. Yeah.
Yeah, I loved that moment, and I particularly love that moment. You know, they're having this conversation about, you know, she's saying, "I want you to tell me this thing that you're deep feeling," and he says, "I don't want to say with everybody else around," and everybody else is around. But she says, no, don't worry about it. Nobody else is around.
Right. And he's like, is anybody here?
Anybody here? Nobody says anything. That is so uncomfortable. I am so uncomfortable.
It was great.
Okay.
Yeah. I would just love to, like, how do they approach the fact that they're there after the fact?
After they've already screwed this up.
I just walked back in. What happened?
Somebody close the door. We talked about her also in City of God. Obviously, she was the young Angelica in that film, and she was also so delightful. But talk about a crazy path, you know, to do this movie, Elysium, Predators, I Am Legend. She's all over the place.
Yes, she is. Yes, she is.
We've already talked about Don McKellar. He was actually the thief. He was the first. He was the second, I guess, the second blind person. He is the guy who rescues the first blind person, sort of rescues in air quotes there. He helps him by driving him home and stealing his car.
And it was so funny because I was watching this. I'm like, why is this guy being so nice? There's something really weird about him. Oh, because he's a thief. Oh, no, he's not a thief. Oh, no, he is a thief.
Yeah. Right. See, he stole the car, and I thought, well, that's the last we saw of him. This blind guy got his car stolen. Okay. And then he shows up in the house. Right. He shows up to help him up and then starts scoping the place out. I thought that was actually brilliant. I thought that was really brilliant.
Yeah, my only issue is Don McKellar. I don't know. There's something about him on screen that doesn't quite settle with me, but it was okay. I mean, he was fine. It just maybe I would have liked it if it was somebody else.
maybe if it was Sandra Oh, my God, why didn't she get a bigger part in this film? Sandra Oh is of everybody in this film, and I actually mean everybody. I adore Sandra Oh. I loved her in Sideways. I love her in Grey's Anatomy. Like, she's in TV movies. I think she is fantastic. She is an incredibly charismatic, complex actor, and she has like 2 lines in this movie, and it was so stupid.
And the strange thing about it that I don't know if it surprised me based on how the story was actually put together, but she actually has that news report where she's talking about, I too have gone blind. So I was half expecting them to bring her here.
Yes.
You know, it's like, why, but then I'm like, well, she's like the mayor or president or whatever she is. I guess she has her own little bunker, and they probably just lock her in her bunker or something.
Yeah, right.
But by then, it's like probably most people are going blind, and it wasn't, what are we going to do?
Yeah, civilization has fallen because of madness. But whatever, it was frustrating. Those were the big characters that I wanted to talk about. Anybody else on your list?
Nope, that was it.
All right, let's talk about cinematography.
Except for the dog. I really, really loved that dog, and I want
not the dog that was eating that guy.
Not that dog.
The other dog that didn't eat that guy.
The dog of tears.
Okay.
I want the dog of tears.
The dog of not eating people. That was the dog that we liked.
Exactly.
Cinematography.
Yeah, the Uruguayan DP César Charlone was the one who shot this film. And I thought it was interesting that they actually did end up going and filming part of it in Uruguay so that he could kind of be on his home turf.
Well, that's very nice to do.
I don't think they did it for that reason, but
I'd like to say that for him.
Right,
César,
for him.
We're going to Uruguay.
Yes, just for you. Just for you.
It was. Can you talk about the VistaVision camera?
Sure. I think it's interesting that they did film part of this with a VistaVision camera. It might have been the whole thing. I didn't know if the whole thing was made this way, but VistaVision basically is a camera where it's a 35 millimeter camera. But instead of the frame itself being kind of running vertically through the lens, where you have the frame itself runs from sprocket hole to sprocket hole horizontally, the VistaVision camera, the film magazine is horizontal, and so what that allows is you have a much bigger frame on the film, because now the horizontal shape of the frame runs with it tilts it. So basically, the sprocket holes are now on the top and bottom of the frame, and so it allows for a much bigger image to be captured on that film, and so you get a much cleaner image. There's a better resolution, not nearly as much grain, and so I think in a film that is
because
the whole idea of the blindness,
the film is still like so I'm envisioning, right, a 35 millimeter frame, and the sprockets are on left and right, and it's in it's landscape. And what you're saying is now the VistaVision film, it's using its own film, right?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, no, I mean, it's 35 millimeter film.
But 35 millimeter, but VistaVision, so the sprockets are now on top and bottom? Is that what you're saying? So,
no, the VistaVision, it's just the way that the film runs through the camera. So it's basically you're taking a regular mag and you're tilting it on its side. You can use the same film. You can use the same film. It's just now when it runs through the camera, it's tilted now. So the sprockets are on the top and bottom. And so the top and the bottom of the frame, instead of a frame running, what would that be? If you tilted it up, the sprockets, it's going to be like this image. I don't know the math, but it's probably like 3 times bigger. You're getting an image that is so much bigger than what you're getting because now the frame is turned. You're assuming that film frames are on the film before you shoot it. A film strip is just a blank strip of film. Of course,
that's what you're right. That's the idiocy that I have perpetrated here. You're right. This is undeveloped film that we're talking about. I can't have that conversation without that bit of clarity. You're right. We haven't developed it. Yeah, I've been shooting digital a long time, Andy. Give me a break.
Film schmilm.
So it is, in fact, the same film. And in fact, Andy, you're getting a much larger frame, I think is what you're trying to say.
That's exactly what I'm trying to say.
What a doofus. Who let this guy on the show?
Well, it's interesting because this is how a lot of IMAX films are shot.
Yes, they are.
Even though it's a 70 millimeter, this is much bigger. But VistaVision, it's the 35 millimeter still, but it allows for a bigger image on the film itself. So you get a really clean, very fine grain print. And in a film that involves so much white that needs, the whole idea is this very kind of clean white. You're able to get that in a much cleaner way. So I think it's pretty interesting that they actually chose to go this route.
Yes, I now also think it's interesting.
Whew, boy, that was
That was tough, man. You know what? I deeply appreciate you keeping up with me, trucking along with me, because I know that everyone else got this before I did. So thanks, everybody. Really good stuff. This
Tech Talk with Andy and Pete.
Great podcasting. All right, let's talk about anything else we want to talk about with the cinematography.
Well, we already talked about like the misframing, the overexposing going white, things falling out of frame. I also thought it was nice that they put a lot of things between the actors and the camera that were glass, and that you had a lot of reflections of kind of those ghostly images of people in the reflections throughout, which just enhanced this whole idea of seeing and what's there and what's not. I liked that quite a bit. So that was the only thing I was going to say.
Production design. Oh, there was a lot of poop in this movie.
Yeah, poop and blood
Trash
and things you don't want to step on. And, Julianne Moore should have been out there with a mop every day cleaning up after these people, because that was just disgusting. Of course, the water itself was all brown anyways.
Yeah.
I feel like if they're trapped in this building, she's the one who's going to explore the entire building, know what is where everything is, how they get into the air ducts, how they get onto the roof. Like, it seems like she's going to be the person who can do all of that.
Yeah,
right?
She did none of that.
No, I know. And instead, she just wanders around and doesn't do anything about poop on the floor.
Oh, there's so much poop. And clothes. You notice there were a lot of naked people.
Well, that's the joy of everybody being blind, is you don't have to wear clothes anymore. I'd be the first to rip it all off.
Andy, these people didn't display the kind of glee that you're exhibiting now.
Hey, if it's hot, what are you going to do?
What do you think that is? Oh, man. Glad people put up through that whole tech talk, because then they get to the nudity.
That's right. They're the winners here.
It was. You know what's interesting? I do have to jump to visual effects, because I think production design and visual effects go hand in hand in this film, because so much of what they did to dirty up the city, to close the city, to remove traffic. I mean, they didn't get permission, I don't think, to shut Toronto down. Judging by this little clips reel that I found of the before and after of the visual effects, there are a lot of sequences where they, added people sleeping on the curb, added just here's a beautiful city street, they just made it trashy. The hallways in the ward, there she is walking down the hallway, and it looks like there's some papers on the floor, but when they're done with the effects plate, oh my goodness, there's poop everywhere, there's bodies, they've made it nasty. So I think that for me is a major success of the film, because I didn't the number of effect shots in this film has to be much higher than one would normally anticipate. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think they actually shot any of it on the streets of Toronto, like you had said.
No, I honestly, I didn't know for what I was speaking. Where did they do the outside at the end? Was that in Uruguay or
that
in
was
Canada?
in Uruguay, in Montevideo?
Okay.
They I guess there was a district in the city that is largely closed down and empty, and so they had almost just the run of the place, and they were able to, like, they had 2 whole blocks, and they just trashed it. They painted everything to make it look like a mess. They just built this whole world, and I think it's just an amazing set piece, that whole last bit when they're walking through the city. Everything feels so authentic. They did, it was filmed in Montevideo, but they did actually, I believe for one shot, they took a plate of a shot of Toronto and put it in the background. So again, going back to Saramago and his desire to kind of keep this city nameless, the whole opening, all the city work that they filmed in the opening was all in Sao Paulo in Brazil. And then all the stage work was done up in Canada, and then all this ending stuff was done in Montevideo. And it really does create this sense of this place that you don't really know where you are. You can't quite get a grasp on it. And I really enjoyed that. I thought they did a great job with that. And I was just really impressed with the work that they did down in Uruguay with how they made that look.
Yeah, me too. It is beautiful. Throughout the entire thing, I mean, beyond the just straight up camera work, the production design, the final look of even the whatever you think of the narrative, the look of the sanatorium is a success in the film. Take no people in it. It looks great, and that's a combination of some great production design and fantastic and subtle visual effects. So that was good stuff. Music?
Yeah, interesting music. Marco Antonio Guimarães, I think is how you say his name, as Uakti.
Yeah, I'm not sure where that comes. That's his performance name?
Yeah, I think so. It's interesting music. Sometimes I felt it worked. Sometimes it was really distracting. And I just felt it didn't enhance the scene. It was working opposite of what I felt the scene was trying to do. That was interesting, though. I enjoyed that what Marco did was he found really unique, interesting instruments. He designed some of his own instruments to kind of make the sounds. All of that I found really interesting. A lot of the instruments that he chose to use were glass, again, tying it into the image of what was on the screen. Very interesting. For me, I wish that I felt that it worked more. There were times, though, that were really, really beautiful.
Yeah, I found that too, particularly in the last 20 minutes of the film. It is this sort of redemption sequence where they have that rebirth we talked about in the rain. It leads them, they find the home, they are building a place in the world again, and the music goes from being really jarring and much more of a soundscape, in my view, earlier in the film, to something that's just, you can tell these instruments that you're talking about are being used in such a beautifully sort of lyrical way that I thought it was particularly surprising. This is not a score that I'm going to listen to, but I could pick a couple of tracks, I think.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the tracks that have that sense of peace, I think, would be the ones that would be worth listening to. The rest it's very discordant.
Right.
Yeah.
How did this thing do around awards? Did it get any traction at all?
I don't think this thing did well enough for anybody to even remember it when awards came around. That's the unfortunate thing like this. I just don't think it ever found its footing, and it just kind of just always fumbled. So that is the sad lot of Blindness, I guess.
Well, at least the book got a sequel, right?
Yes, the book did get a sequel called Seeing, interestingly, or I should say fittingly, that he ended up writing in, how long ago was it?
2004.
Right. So 9 years after the book came out.
You haven't read that one either, I take it?
Haven't read that one, and probably won't. Yeah. I mean, I've seen this film. I feel I've covered the story now.
You did your time. And you already mentioned that it has now since been remade in other media.
Right, exactly. A stage version that began in 2007, and then an opera in 2011. And I have to say, that seems like a really fitting way to tell this story.
An opera.
I wouldn't watch it because I hate opera, but opera has this intense, emotional, often kind of tragic way of telling the stories. I feel like opera might be a really interesting way to explore the story here.
I'll see that. I actually don't hate opera. I actually I like opera, but I don't know who's in it. I mean, unless it's Andrea Bocelli, I can't imagine it being.
Well, you'd have to watch it in German.
Oh, it's a German thing?
Yeah.
Fascinating.
I mean, a lot of operas are foreign. I don't know what most of them are saying.
That's a really good point. I said that like I was really surprised, didn't I?
It's like, what?
That's because I was reading about Andrea Bocelli and I wasn't paying attention to you. And that's what made it funny. What? This is an opera in German? I am shocked. Since when did this start happening? All right. Well, let's talk about it. Give us the bad news. How did it do with the numbers?
Yeah, this film opened October 3rd, 2008, after having premiered at Cannes, having a rough time there. It cost $25 million to make this film, which in today's dollars is about $27 million. Couldn't find anything on Princeton Advertising. Can't imagine they spent much advertising it. Domestically, it made just under $3.5 million, and internationally just under $17 million. All told, that's a total gross of just over $20 million, adjusted just under $22 million. So in the end, it ended up losing an adjusted profit per finished minute of negative 42, almost 43,000.
Where does that put it at the bottom of the charts?
It's pretty low, although it's just above Red Belt, and sadly, it's just above Children of Men too.
Oh, that is sad.
But again, I think Children of Men is one of those films that has had such acclaim since then that I just couldn't find all the numbers for like the digital and streaming and all that. I have a feeling that its numbers probably increased quite a bit because of that. Whereas this, I don't think there are that many people running out to see this these days.
Before we jump into ranking it, it does boast one of the coolest bits of poster art of Julianne Moore, certainly, I think, of that I've seen. It's just really creepy. There is a great picture of her very close, looking up the clouds, like from the final sequence, and it's got fingers, other people's fingers all over her face, like pulling her head back. You kind of get that sense that it's kind of a pastiche of her experience in the grocery store, and it's really haunting and beautiful selection.
I am kind of also partial to the one where it is the out of focus figure with the hand reaching out, and then blindness is written in ever decreasing size letters, just like an eye doctor's chart.
Oh, totally. Yeah, that is another great one.
Might be putting a
little
fine a point on
too
it.
Fine a point, right?
As we've already discussed with this film, it doesn't bother me too much.
Yeah. Well, right. And then the tagline on a lot of these posters is like, "Hope is blind, trust is blind." Really, faith is blind. Again, somebody get a hammer. Anyway, let's rank it.
Let's do it.
Head on over to flickchart.com/thenextreel and search for Blindness. This is not the documentary film Notes on Blindness, different film, but you should probably watch that one. I hear tremendously great things about that film. This is Blindness, and I kind of feel like we're rolling the dice. I think we're going to be doing a lot of rock, paper, scissors on this one.
Well, yeah, I guess we'll see. Because I enjoyed this film certainly more than you did. However, it's not something I'll be returning to.
Oh, there
often.
we go. We might have an easy run. Here we go.
Yeah, we'll see. First up, Blindness, or Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
I think it's safe to say, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
I think it is. Next up, Blindness, or The Adventures of Baron Munchausen.
Boy,
Munchausen for me.
Take us right to the back of the line. Munchausen for me too.
Blindness, or Gone with the Wind.
Oh, definitely Gone with the Wind.
Yeah, Gone with the Wind. Blindness, or Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
I would watch Indiana Jones before Blindness.
I would also say, I feel there is
somebody pulling out your fingernails right now?
No, it's just, it pains me to have to vote for Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, because man, is that movie dumb. Oh, it just makes me so sad that that's an Indiana Jones movie. I want to pick Blindness out of rage to them for making that movie.
But then you realize that the protest vote never works.
Wow, getting all political now. Yeah, we'll do Crystal Skull. Blindness or Apt Pupil? I will say Blindness here.
Really?
Yep. I had so many problems with that.
Yeah, we definitely went to town on Apt People. What the hey-hoo, Andy? I'm going to give you Blindness on this one.
What the hey-hoo, indeed. Blindness or Alien Resurrection?
Oh, I'm Alien Resurrection.
I surprisingly am too. Blindness or Pritzi's Honor? I will say Pritzi's Honor.
I will also say Pritzi's Honor.
Blindness or The Edge? I will actually say Blindness here.
Oh, The Edge.
As much as I once liked it, I had so many more problems with it.
I really did, yeah. I just don't know. I'm having trouble figuring out whether I want to go to the mat on it. We're at the very bottom
what
of
the
the
hey-hoo,
list.
Pete? Let's go with Blindness.
Well, all right, Andy, what the hey-hoo? Blindness it is.
It's only going to give it one extra spot. So there you go. 249. Right. It's pretty close to the bottom. It's pretty close. It's within 10 from the bottom.
Well, unfortunate for it that we've seen so many great movies.
Yeah, I mean, it is an interesting film. I felt like I got some interesting things out of it. I also just felt like I don't need to worry about this film again. So,
what would it have been like if our series started with like Under the Cherry Moon, Rush, Blindness, and Pritzi's Honor? Like, how do you even begin to rank those?
I think Pritzi's Honor has a bad rap. I feel like I should rewatch that because I feel so bad that it's so low.
Oh no, it's fine. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Don't worry about it. What's your letterboxd?
Despite everything, I still gave this 3 stars.
Oh, Andy.
I don't know. Maybe 2.5 now. You're guilting me. You're guilting a half out of me.
Well, this is a 1-star film that I'm going to give a second half star. So 1.5 stars, because what you have reminded me of in the whole experience is that there is so much to appreciate visually in the film that's an extra half star. I really do appreciate most of the look of the film. I think it's worth noting the choices that they made there. There's a lot of it that's just plain beautiful.
Okay, I think that sounds good. So
it's
that's
still not
overall.
It's not a good movie.
I think there's more to it than you're giving it, but again,
I feel like I was not the complete naysayer that I know you expected me to be.
No, you weren't. I felt like I was actually going to walk in defending it a lot more than I did, and I was surprised I didn't defend it as much because I don't know. It's one of those movies I feel was very interesting. I don't find myself agreeing with any critic who would have put it on their top 10 list.
Oh yeah. And here's the thing, Andy. This movie starts out with such incredible promise, don't you think? Like the opening of this film and the whole concept around spontaneous blindness is a terrific conceit. I would see that movie. The problem is the rest of this movie isn't that movie that I wanted.
They didn't get it to where it could have gone. But again, I don't think that's what Saramago's book was really going after. Based on everything that I've read about his book, it was going to be much more of an allegorical sort of story, talking about societal blindness and how people, just kind of the way that people operate. And I think to that extent, this is a good movie, and I do enjoy watching it. That aspect of it, it's just. I do kind of prefer a little more story, and I do think it would be a really interesting disease film for somebody to make one where you do have blindness. And I mean, I guess, what was it, The Day of the Triffids kind of deals with that a little bit, where you have whatever it is that lands on the planet and makes everybody blind, and all those alien seeds everywhere that people, what are they trying to do, eat everybody or something?
You had me at alien seeds. I never saw it.
I didn't either. Clearly.
But that's not to belabor this, because I'm sure I will belabor it again later. But I believe I've mentioned something about the next reality paradox.
What's that?
It's that thing I talked about in the first act of our show tonight.
Yes.
And
very
so
clever.
we this is The Day of the Triffids. As soon as you say spontaneous blindness, I am made completely okay with it if there are alien seeds. You don't need to go very far.
It's okay. So here's The Day of the Triffids. Maybe we should have included this in our disease series list. This is actually the book thing. But The Day of the Triffids is a 1951 post-apocalyptic novel about a plague of blindness that befalls the entire world, allowing the rise of an aggressive species of plant.
That fits the paradox. It's okay. It is absurd, but it sets its own reality such that it becomes believable in its own universe. I'm okay with that. All right.
Well, now, if we ever revisit a disease series again, We'll have to include the Day of the Triffids.
Well, that we're gonna leave that for next week's discussion, which is the final in our disease series. Yes, where do we go from here?
Yes, we are ending this thing with. It has been a full 2-month run. We are ending it finally with Steven Soderbergh's Contagion, which I'm curious to revisit because I remember enjoying it, but it's not something I've been compelled to revisit. So now will be my chance.
I remember thinking it's a lousy comedy. Before that, just coming up this weekend, we've got War Dogs, the Todd Phillips film with Jonah Hill and Miles Teller. And we're going to see that, and we're going to do a film board on it, so you can catch that first thing next week. Yeah, so be on the lookout.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's it. I got to go to bed.
Me too. My head has been hurting, and everything's turning white. I figure if I get some sleep, it'll all just go away.
Amazon giveth, Andy.
As Amazon always doeth.
I'm doing a 5-star. I feel like
there you go.
Do you know why? Of course. I mean, this is a very interesting spread of reviews.
Yes. Normally, it almost without fail, it almost always skews to 5 stars.
Yeah. People genuinely or generally, I think, tilt up. But in this case, it is a pretty even spread between all of the assorted stars, and I'm just going to give a 5-star because I think it's he tries to talk about teens.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, this was from Mr. Marc Alexandre on October 31st, 2009. Wow, why does this have such a low rating on IMDb, and why does so many people hate it? The only answer that I can come up with is that most of the people that hate it are teens and that don't know the meaning of plot hole. There's no plot hole in this movie. The fact that there's no explanation why people become blind is not a plot hole. It's just not an important detail. Saying that it's a plot hole is just like saying the fact that there's no explanation why people become zombies in Dawn of the Dead is a plot hole. It's not a plot hole. It's just not what the movie is about. It was intentionally not explained anyway. It's an awesome movie. It's not only entertaining, it's also sad, disturbing, powerful, and I could go on and on and on. I'm pretty sure that it's the only movie that made me go from sad to disturbed to happy and to sad again. Short review? I know, but I'm just not good at writing reviews. I just hope that it's at least slightly helpful. Scene.
Wow.
So
10 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure that defining the term plot hole in this review actually supports his awareness of what plot holes are. Which is unfortunate.
We don't question.
Much like blindness, just don't question.
Well, I've got another 5-star by P. Bogue, who says a very cool movie. This movie is probably one of those love it or hate it type movies. I don't know if I can even explain why I love this movie. I'm just fascinated by it. It haunts me. And every time I see it on cable, I watch it. The experience of being blind and quarantined immediately like that, and then being ignored by the powers that be, is a screwed up reality nowadays. The music is appealing to me too. I could go on and on, but I'll spare you.
That's such a tease. I expected him to go on and on.
Well, he must have read your review first instead of
maybe that's it. I should go on and.
It is hard to believe that we have been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
Oh, I know. You're telling me. Producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Just visit thenextreel.com/originals. Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great conversations.
In Season 6, our Disease Films series had adaptations like The Omega Man, based on I Am Legend, The Andromeda Strain, Children of Men, and Blindness.
I Am Legend is so much better than The Omega Man.
What about the Will Smith version?
Don't get me started.
For our This Is Real Life Jack series, we talked Black Hawk Down and Seabiscuit, some great true stories based on fantastic books.
And we had more listeners' choices like The Fly, The Emigrants, and Scott Pilgrim vs. the World.
You just did a series on The Fly on the Sitting in the Dark podcast. Did you read the original material?
Wasn't watching every Fly movie enough?
Our Big Betty Davis series featured adaptations like The Little Foxes, Now Voyager, All About Eve, and Whatever Happened to Baby Jane.
Are you calling Betty Davis big?
Only in personality and force.
She is a force to be reckoned with.
We talked about the entire The Godfather trilogy, of course. Iconic page to screen, even if it is just the one Mario Puzo book. I wonder if Coppola will ever make The Sicilian.
We also had some Zhang Yimou adaptations with Judo and Raise the Red Lantern. Absolutely gorgeous movies.
And don't forget the Hughes Brothers series with From Hell, based on the graphic novel. Brilliant material.
Kelly Reichardt gave us Wendy and Lucy and Certain Women, adapted from short stories.
Plus more Hayao Miyazaki as we tackled Howl's Moving Castle.
Find all these books and more at thenextreel.com/originals. Every purchase supports the show.
Get the full list of adapted films that we've covered at thenextreel.com/originals and start your next read today.